Hi, today I'm talking about LeetCode problem 468, validating IP addresses. This is a pretty quick problem. What it's asking you to do is check whether an input string is a valid IPv4 address or IPv6. And then it has descriptions of what an IPv4 address is and what an IPv6 address is. And basically these descriptions are just formats for the string. So it says that an IPv4 address needs to be 4 blocks of 1 to 3 numerals without leading zeros if there are other digits behind. So it gives this example, 0.01 is invalid because there's a leading 0 with a 1 behind it. It should just be 172.16.254.1. Each of these little blocks need to be between 0 and 255 inclusive. And they can't have anything other than numbers. And so then IPv6 addresses is the other kind that you want to identify. And here it's between 1 and 4 hex digits, so all the normal numbers plus A through F, and they can be upper or lower case. And you can omit leading zeros if there are any, but you can't omit all the leading zeros to result in a case where you just had 2 colons next to each other. So if there were a single value here, like if this was a 1, we could cut it down to :1, but it would be invalid to just have : if they were all zeros. So those are the criteria for an IPv4 versus an IPv6 address. And then they give a few examples. And what you're supposed to do is return the string IPv4 if it's an IPv4 or 6, and then neither if it's not valid for either of those. And so this one is a fairly simple problem. I chose to address it with just regular expressions, and I've compiled just 2 separate regular expressions here. For the IPv4 address and the 6. And here these aren't perfectly definitive or perfectly dispositive. That is, if you match this regular expression, that doesn't mean you're an IPv4 address, but it means you're at least formatted like one. So what this is just saying is that you have between 1 and 3 digits, 0 to 9, separated by a dot, and that repeats 4 times. For the IPv4 regular expression. And so what I ask is my input string, is it a full match for the IPv4 possible regular expression? And if it is a full match, then I'm just going to split it using the dot as a separator. So I'll split it into its 4 parts. And then I'll just check for each of those parts, if I convert that part to an int, is that int between 0 and 256. So that's the main check here, because it seemed difficult to me to write a regular expression that would check to see if a number was between 0 and 256. It seemed a lot easier just to parse it as an int and make this comparison. So you can imagine 3 digits, 555, that wouldn't be a valid IP address, but it would fit this regular expression. And the other thing I'm doing here is just checking to make sure that it doesn't have a leading 0 with a following digit. So this says if the first digit in my part is a 0 and the part length is greater than 1, the length of the part is greater than 1, then this is invalid and we can return early with a neither. If we're between 256, we can continue and keep checking all the other parts of my IP address. If it's not between 0 and 256, we can return early, return neither. And then finally, if we've checked each of the parts and each one is valid, then we can return IPv4. It is valid. So that handles checking if it's an IPv4. The second check here is whether or not it's an IPv6. And here we just use this regular expression. And what it is the letters A through F lowercase or A through F uppercase or the numerals 0 through 9. And we can have 1 to 4 of those separated by a colon and repeat that 6 times. So that's the check for IPv6. And actually, that's really the definition of an IPv6 address. If it is a full match for that, then it is IPv6. So I think we could really just simplify this even more by doing that. And here I expect it should work. Accepted. And successful. I've run this a few times already. I ran into a couple edge cases here when I was running through it myself, or when I was working through it the first time. The first edge case I hit was something I actually discovered while I was testing it, so I shouldn't have failed on this case. But so here where it says leading zeros are invalid, I did not interpret that as, or rather how I interpreted it was if this final block here had just been 0, so .254.0, I took that as a leading 0, which is not the correct way to interpret that. And so I was saying that anything that was just a 0 was invalid. And so that's one edge case I ran into. Another edge case I ran into was an edge case around .00, which technically has a leading 0. So originally I had just written this as if part 0 is 0, if it begins with a 0, and I said the value was greater than 0, then return neither. But of course 00 has a leading 0, and the value is not greater than 0. Yeah, so this is a pretty simple problem, but that's how I solved it. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by clicking the like button. If you want to see more content in a similar style, I'm going to try to keep working through LeetCode problems and just recording my explanations of them. So feel free to subscribe. Thanks for your time.